So we've talked about football and we've talked about rugby league. I think it's time we talk about the third choice sport, F1, that's back this weekend.
Ooh.
See, already I've furrowed Mono's brow for saying it's the third choice sport, but I'm going with it because he's not said anything, so it's fine. Ken, I think it's going to be mainly you and me talking on this one.
I think so.
I'm going to start with, have you seen the new Mercedes livery that they've released today?
Yeah, I saw that. I think it looks really, really good.
I think for all of them, that's going to be the best one of the year so far.
Yeah, it's obviously, we know why we've done it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it is a great cause, and it's, greater diversity in the sport, because I get, apart from Lewis Hamilton, there hasn't really been, a black or, ethnic minority, come through. There's been a few kind of Asian drivers, but there's not really been, anyone. Yeah, there's no one that springs to mind that wasn't even close,
Don't you think it would have made a bigger statement if the car just looked like it did normally, but it had no sponsorship on apart from a Black Lives Matter message? Don't you think that's a bigger message to put out there than just changing the colour of your car?
It would be, but I imagine there is the thought that I think even Mercedes this week have said they're going to have to make redundancies over the next few months. And they're probably one of the most highly funded teams in F1. And there will be some sponsorship considerations there, won't there? And it's sad to say, but...
Yeah, and actually looking at it...
I just think changing the colour of the car is an easy win for them to do, something like that. I mean, it is a good cause. I'm not taking anything away from the cause.
No, absolutely. It's just, I don't know, I think it's just a different statement, than just putting Black Lives Matter. As much as the message that is, I think doing something, completely different, like changing the whole colour of the car. And, Mercedes cars have always been silver, going back to the 1950s. It's their tradition. It's like, the British racing green that Jaguar had.
And is it just for the... I'm asking questions. I'm probably going to just quickly look into the answer for myself. Is this just for one race, or is this it now? Is that their colour for the year?
I think it's for the year. I think I heard.
Yeah, I think I read
for 2020.
Oh, yeah, it is for 2020, yeah.
Now, what would be interesting is, are the drivers going to have black suits?
Anyway, what are you most looking forward to, Ken? Obviously, racing gets back underway on Friday. Well, testing gets underway on Friday, first practice.
It is going to be different. And with a lot of sports, the fans make it. With football, the fans make it. Like the atmosphere and the oohs and ahs. With F1, for a TV spectacle, I don't know how it's going to be. And I know people, like Mono will laugh at this and say it's just cars going round.
It is cars going round.
It's just, that would be the weirdest. I think getting the commentators, Crofty and Martin Brundle, really good commentators, trying to get them kind of on the same level as if it was a normal race weekend, I think will help it a lot.
I don't think it'll actually make a difference.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll make a difference because I saw David Coulthard did one of his Channel 4 F1 promos on Instagram earlier this week, and he was saying that as a driver, it's not like football, it's not like tennis where you're in the middle of it with the crowds. Yes, you are in a race car, but you've got a helmet on, you've got an engine, you can't hear the crowd. So he was saying that it doesn't actually, or doesn't expect it will make a lot of difference. Where it will is after the final lap, and the whole podium is going to be different. And even with the TV coverage, other than the odd cutaway of fan waving flag, doesn't actually. I don't think it actually makes much difference.
No, that's what I'm kind of thinking, but it almost. I don't want it to become like a test weekend. I get from the driver that if you say to a driver, you're racing against everyone else and you've got to get to number one. I get that, and they are going to drive as fast as they can. But I think it's everything else around it where it might just feel, because it's open space and the paddock, and it won't quite have that feel. It'll feel like a test weekend to most people. That kind of non-pressure might manifest itself in some way to, I don't know, a lesser performance. I don't know. I am kind of, thinking worst case scenario, and
What's a crowd noise help?
Would you pipe it in?
Yeah.
That's not. Who would do that? What sport would honestly do that?
And even into maybe to the headphones of the drivers, make them feel like there's something going on.
Some tennis noises.
So it's all a blur anyway. You probably don't see it that much.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what DC was saying. That it just doesn't. It doesn't make a difference for the drivers.
But probably what I'm most looking forward to is just the driver lineups. We've not seen them in full yet, and there's actually been a lot going on in the driver market since the lockdowns happened.
Silly season. It has been truly silly.
Silly season happened. While not a race was raced this year. So some big ones out of that is Sebastian Vettel leaving Ferrari, which has kind of triggered a lot happening throughout the field. So where would you go on?
I was going to say, should we go through? What do we think then? First of all, obviously Vettel's leaving Ferrari. I understand that. Really understand that. And I think he's probably been linked to every single team at some point since he announced he was leaving.
Hang on. When does this start?
So this is for next year.
Right.
So we're talking about next year.
Yeah.
Right.
Have we had this year yet?
Exactly.
No, this is what we're saying. It's all happened before we've even raced this year.
So I was a bit confused then, because I thought it was starting, soon, and they don't know who's driving the cars.
Interestingly, it could be if any of them come down with coronavirus, which we could come back to later, because that's really interesting.
If someone comes down with coronavirus, do they use their third choice driver?
Yes.
I did have that written down to kind of loop everything back in to a third choice degree.
You not said he's ruined it for you. Stand on him.
So I just realised I was celebrating someone possibly getting coronavirus.
Okay,
I wasn't doing.
As we're doing that, shall we stick to this year to begin with? Then we can talk about next year's silly season as well. Australia, the race was cancelled. Australia, the race was cancelled because two members of the McLaren team were tested positive, and they said that if the full team can't be there, we don't compete, and so that's why that race was cancelled. So F1 have said that if anyone on your team or driver is ill, you have to put in replacements. So the races do carry on and continue.
How close are the driving teams? Like football, you all train together. So if one person comes down with it,
so with
there's possibilities that someone else who he's been in contact with in the team could come down with it, and you could lose.
So with the driver, they mainly travel separately with maybe a personal trainer and an assistant.
So it's not the kind of thing where if one person comes down with it, then it could potentially take down a couple of.
Not necessarily. The team would, like the mechanics, would all travel together. Majority of. So when they arrive at the circuit, if they're tested, then you will know. If a driver arrives and they're tested and they're positive, then they can just be taken out.
And Renault
if that's the way that their testing is going to be done when they arrive without any interaction with anyone else.
So you could lose your mechanic team then.
And Renault are running two separate teams. So they've had one team doing their practice that they've been doing the last couple of weeks. They've now all gone to, I think they've gone to Budapest and are quarantining there, even though they don't actually have to. And then they've got another team that have gone there for this weekend to start with. So they've got an A team and a B team almost for Renault.
Did they have a third choice team?
That's the B team.
That's the B team. Sorry, going back to what I was saying earlier then. So if a driver comes down, teams have to put in a reserve, their third choice driver. They can't just say they're not going to compete. So it's quite interesting.
On. Joe Hart has just left Burnley.
He is on his way to Austria right now, ready to drive potentially for Haas, because they've not actually got, or they've not said what their reserve structure is going to be.
It's going to be Joe Hart.
The most interesting one is Mercedes, because they've said that they've got Esteban Gutierrez and Stoffel van Dorn. So Esteban's their sim driver, and then Stoffel's in their Formula E team. But Mercedes have also said to their customers, so to McLaren and Racing Point, those drivers will be the backup for them as well. Ferrari have got, interestingly, Ferrari's reserve driver is Antonio Giovinazzi, who drives for Alfa Romeo, or they've got Pascal Wehrlein. Red Bull was a big question mark, but I think it's Sebastian Buemi and maybe bringing back Brendan Hartley, who drove for Toro Rosso the year before.
2 years ago,
Renault have got their test driver, Sergei Sorokin. Alfa Romeo have got Robert Kubica as their test driver. Haas, they don't know. And Williams have got Jack Aitken from F2. And Jack Aitken is the reason why I think, linking back to Sebastian Vettel, why Vettel won't be in a team next year. Because I think there's too much coming up from F2.
On the whole Vettel situation, I think I'd just love it if he went to Mercedes.
Really?
For a year. Yeah. For a year. Settle the debate. Same car. German driver at Mercedes. So, I think he'd... Not that Hamilton gets a bit of favouritism, obviously, but I think Vettel in a Mercedes might just level that playing field a little bit more.
Would Mercedes... Would they want to do that and limit the chances of having a world champion who surpasses Michael Schumacher's record? Because we saw Vettel last year. If he ain't win, for me, he can't do it. He cracks under pressure way too easily.
Yeah.
The instant
if he's not leading. Yeah.
And the instant with Leclerc at Mexico last year, and Canada last year,
and Brazil.
It's just Brazil, not Mexico. Would you, if you're Mercedes, would you risk that? If you're Toto, would you risk that?
Potentially not.
That's my only thought.
Yeah, which is why I don't think it will happen, but...
Be good to see that.
It would be good to see it. And I think a couple of years ago, they were both fighting for 5, and that was like a really big season. But last year, I think they both mellowed a little bit, and there was a lot more respect and a lot more kind of... You could see a bit more of a friendship there.
Do you think?
There was a little bit... which race did Vettel win? Is it Singapore?
Last year.
Yeah. And after the race, Hamilton came up and congratulated him in the little press paddock, and then when Hamilton won in Mexico, won the championship, Vettel came up to him, and it just seemed a bit more of a mutual respect. Whereas the year before, they had incidents at Baku, and it's a constant fight all year. So, yeah, on a personal level, I think they might go for it, but yeah, for the team, I don't think we'd take that risk.
Do you think it will be Hamilton 7th this year?
Odds on, yeah. It's hard to look past him. And I know, a lot of people's argument would be, he's in the fastest car, he wins. But he had 11 wins.
Definitely how Formula One works, by the way.
It is.
That if you're on pole, you win.
Fastest car, you start first, you win.
Well, last year of 8 pole position, only 8 people won from pole position out of 21 races.
Were they in the
Boom.
fastest car?
No, not necessarily.
So
Definitely
how
not.
many have won if you're the fastest car and you start first?
Let's have a look.
That's too much of a complex stat to just pull out of the air, isn't it?
No, it's not. Only 5 times.
Out of
21.
21.
Bottas did it in Azerbaijan. Hamilton did it in Monaco and Paul Ricard.
And Monaco, he definitely did on the fastest car because he had engine issues, didn't he?
Yeah. And then
But
Bottas did it in.
that is a circuit where you can't overtake, though. So
Yeah. Bottas did it in United States, and then Hamilton did it in Abu Dhabi. So yeah, only 5 times all season.
but also, it's not fair. It's not really fair to say that the fastest car will be the fastest at every single track. You look at Austria last year. Going into that, you would have thought Mercedes would have been odds on to win that after
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Mercedes wins on the bounce.
I've got 8 on the first 8.
Yeah, and then Austria, their car just did not too hot.
It was
just overheated all the way, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a really hot weekend.
Yeah.
They overheated. An interesting thing about that was the winner, Verstappen, started second, dropped down to 9th, I think, on the first lap, and then still came through and managed to win. So
both of you keep saying the interesting thing is, and then you say something about F1.
Should we talk about next year's driver lineups? What we think?
Yeah, fire away.
So it's all very much still up in the air, isn't it? Because there's hardly anyone with a contract.
Yep.
Mercedes, neither Lewis or Valtteri have a contract for next year. The only ones, Ferrari, both have a contract for next year. So that's going to be Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Max Verstappen's got a contract at Red Bull. Still the question mark over Alex Albon, whether he continues. McLaren, same for both. So they've got Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris, both in contract, obviously.
Which
for
I'm
Daniel,
really looking forward to.
That is going to be comedy gold, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's been, at the moment with Carlos and Lando, it's hilarious. But with Danny Rick, that's going to be really funny. Renault have only got Esteban Ocon next year so far. AlphaTauri, again, they've got Daniel Kvyat and Pierre Gasly, but both out of contract. The interesting one at Aston Martin, Sergio Perez has got a contract. Lance Stroll hasn't.
Well,
he will do, though. It's Daddy's team.
The interesting thing about that is Lawrence Stroll has invested in, I'm not sure if it's Mercedes or whether it's the Chrysler Group, which own Mercedes, but he's invested in, I think it is in Mercedes. He's got like a 5% share or something. So with Lance Stroll being out of contract and Valtteri, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that you might see him in a Mercedes.
That'd be terrible, wouldn't it?
It would be terrible.
Come on.
And especially, in this financial climate, if he's got a little bit of financial backing.
Just a little bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
I'm going to come back to who's got investments in other teams because it's really interesting. Well, I think it is anyway. Mono won't. Alfa Romeo, both Kimi Räikkönen and Antonio Giovinazzi are out of contract next year. Kimi, I think, will be retiring. I think he's already said. I think he's hinted he's going to retire. Haas.
What retirement that'll be for him? I think he's really mellowed these last couple of years. I just think apparently kids do that to you, don't they?
Yeah.
Had a couple of kids. He's mellowed out. He's on Instagram. Yeah. I think he's really going to enjoy his retirement.
Is that the sign for chilling out if someone's on Instagram?
What?
Because he's on Instagram, it shows he's chilled out. How so?
He was never on Instagram, and they just.
Well, I'm not on Instagram, and I think I'm quite a chilled fellow.
No, you're very intense. We find you very intense and intimidating.
Well, I apologise for that. I'm sorry.
There's a reason. There's a reason they call Kimmy the Iceman. Over at Haas, Roman Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen both had a contract. I think it'll be.
Wouldn't surprise me if they remain that way.
Yeah. I'm surprised Roman is there for this year. To be honest, I think that was a massive surprise when they announced that both of them were staying. And then at Williams, again, George Russell, Nicholas Latifi, both not in contract for next year. George Russell in a Mercedes.
I think would be a good idea. I think that would be the future.
Because Toto Wolff has taken out a stake in Williams, hasn't he? I think it's been reported.
Are you watching what Mono's doing, by the way?
I'm not, no. Is he falling asleep?
No.
What's he doing?
He's getting random books off the shelf.
I was using this opportunity to find out what I can do up old junk. I've got some books here.
Oh, cool.
Well, it's called Making Up Old Junk.
And this one's called Anyone Can Knit. And I just thought that I'd use my time wisely whilst you're talking about F1.
You carry on. We'll talk about engineering and mechanics, and we'll talk about kicking a leather ball around a piece of grass later.
I might get a comb out and comb my beard.
I saw you were picking your nails before. That was really interesting.
What was the interesting thing about it?
What I found.
Ooh.
Yeah, so going back to
Carry on.
It's been reported that Toto Wolff has bought a 5% stake in Williams.
Yeah.
I think it's part of the sport that's bizarre, where the team principal of one team can buy a stake in another.
Yeah.
It's just
wouldn't happen in any other, in the same competition.
So openly.
In the same competition.
Yeah. Let's talk, if we can, let's go for the two that have been rumoured that I hope do not happen. One of them is Vettel staying. And the other one that I really don't want to see is the return of Fernando Alonso.
So when you say Vettel staying, where?
I think his time is done.
I don't think anyone can afford him.
And if you look at, obviously, the drivers that we've got at the moment, but then looking at the F2, you've got Callum Eilert, you've got Jack Aitken,
Sunji, is it?
Yeah. You've got Nikita Mazepin, Luca Giotto, so many drivers coming up. I think that teams are going to start looking at the youth, because with the new guys you had over the last couple of years, your Charles, your Lando, it has, and the young rivalries that are going to be carrying on for years, put some excitement back into it, hasn't it?
Well, this kind of ties in with. Well, it was going to be
Whoa! You said it'll put excitement back into it, and that implies that there's already excitement there.
Yes, there is. Right, you're going to mute. Right, carry on.
So it kind of ties in with what was going to be the 2021. It's now going to be the 2022 rules, mainly the financial rules, which I think we did discuss on another podcast briefly. That
very briefly.
The cap of the $150 million or 145, not new, but different manufacturers. We've had Jaguar 20 years ago. Aston Martin are coming back in, but taking over Force India. Just BMW are a part of the part of it for a long time. It would just be nice to have teams being able to think, right, that's how much you can spend. We're going to come in, give it a shot for 3 years at least. So tying in with what you're saying about the young drivers is it would be nice, to have a bigger grid. If it's 10 teams, why not, 12, 13, 14 teams where, a 28-car grid.
What have I missed?
Yeah, I don't know what I've missed.
What have I missed?
Barney's been combing his hair. Which, for those of you that can't see Barney, I don't know what he looks like, which would be most of you, he doesn't have any.
Well, actually, there's a little bit there just because I've not had my hair cut. So, I've got to look out. I'm trying to just get the fringe right. You know what I mean?
You'd be better off combing back your eyebrows.
Right, I'm muting both of you again. Right. Carry on, Ken.
Having a bigger grid, having more opportunities for drivers and for teams. And say if you had 12 or 14 teams, how many of them might be able to be competitive and, get to the front of the grid. It's not just going to be about 3 teams, which, yes, it has been over much of the last 7 or 8 years in the turbo hybrid era.
Yeah.
There's not really been anyone. I think Williams challenged 2015. They were quite competitive with Bottas and Massa. But apart from that, it's just been a kind of dominance of, Mercedes dominance, really.
And I think that's going to carry on this year. But I think the midfield, I think second place is up for grabs. Ferrari, I did watch quite a lot of the pre-season testing because, I'm that kind of guy. And it just wasn't performing. And, okay, was it sandbagging? Was it they'd not turned the engine up? But they've not done massive upgrades in the time they've been off. They're bringing an upgraded gearbox and engine, but no aero, which is the bit that they said was the main issue at Barcelona for the testing. Red Bull.
They've always seemed to have that kind of issue. They've always been a very powerful team. Red Bull have always been very aero dominated, yet lacked power. And Mercedes seemed to get that perfect balance.
Yeah. Red Bull, they were really fast in testing, and both Max and Alex were spinning off all over the place. Is that a sign of lots of power and feel that they can push it and see how far they can push it? Or is it aero issues?
I'm not too sure on that. I'm
sure they will say the latter.
I am being distracted, bro.
Oh, what? Should I just boot him out?
I want to know what he sounds like. What instrument is it?
Flute.
I'm learning how to play the recorder.
Excellent.
This is the first time I've picked one up, and I'm hoping to get a tune out of this by the end of the podcast.
Did you not learn it?
Right, you carry on with that, and we'll come back to you later. Right, he's muted again. Annie's muted. Right, just turn them off. Yes. What do you Red Bull? What do you think? I think they could be second team this year.
Dark horses. I think Max is growing year by year. He took 3 wins last year, which were all great drives. But I think his consistency over the last 18 months, I think, has been really, really good. He's always around the podium. He's matured a lot. Yeah, matured a lot. I think, was it Baku? The incident with Danny Rick. I think that might have. He was very, I want to say, petulant in that incident because Danny Rick was faster, and he made a double move, and I think after that he's knuckled down, and the results on track have improved. So
maybe Danny Rick leaving Red Bull gave him the chance to grow.
Potentially, even though they were good teammates.
Yeah.
By and large, they were good teammates, but on track, whenever they were close, you always had a feeling that they'd come together.
So I'm going for Mercedes top of the championship, the constructors,
Yeah.
and Red Bull second. I think the third's up for grabs. I think Ferrari, McLaren, and even Racing Point could be in the pink Mercedes.
In the pink Mercedes.
In the pink Mercedes. Red Bull
That's the
could
Mercedes
do
B
something.
team.
Yeah.
I'd still say Ferrari would take it. I'm not going to say just. I think they will take it by quite comfortably. But that kind of 5th, 6th in the races might be a shake-up.
Yeah. Sort of with McLaren, Racing Point, Renault, Williams seem to be a little more confidence. There'll always be confidence from Williams, but
yeah, a lot more confidence. They got better throughout the year.
Yeah,
last year. And if you watch Drive to Survive, the kind of reasons behind that became obvious. They were late to pre-season testing last year. They were just constantly behind, and they sorted that problem out. Let's say, got rid of the guy who was in charge of developing the car and went in a different direction. But with Williams, there's a problem, and it has been mentioned by some people, and I think by yourself maybe, it's a problem at the top.
Yeah, for me it is. And I think that my criticism has always been, not criticism, my view has always been that with Williams, they're very much, and it's Claire Williams at the top, it's very much, we will be that team again. We will be that world championship team again.
Good soundbite.
But that's where it stops. There's no, how are we going to do that? It just always seems to be falling back to, we were great once.
It's a good soundbite.
Yeah. And what I think it needs is it needs to have, yes, the Williams family still involved, but they're in that, what Niki Lauda was at Mercedes. Yeah. It's that figurehead, that inspirational person to be in the garage, within the team, still there, but not doing the day-to-day. It needs a fresh, everything else in the team has changed. Part of the team is up for sale. It needs, and I'm not saying it's got to, I'm not saying that the Williams family go at all, but I think there's got to be new management in there.
I fully agree. I think it would be a shame if Williams continued on this, on this downward trend under Frank Williams, while he's still around. I think it would be a shame if something were to happen to him and Williams weren't the team that they once were, which have been very competitive throughout their whole time. And it was Williams was kind of built on having that kind of technical leadership and technical direction. In the mid-90s, they had Patrick Head and Adrian Newey, who are probably two of the best. Adrian Newey is by far the best designer of a Formula One car in history.
Yeah,
Patrick Head's one of the best, technical directors.
So we've got 8 races so far. We've got 2 in Austria, 1 in Budapest, 2 in Silverstone, Barcelona, Belgium, and then finishing at the moment 6th of September in Monza. But it could be one of 3 visits to Italy with Imola and also Mugello, which would be interesting for Ferrari.
Yeah,
because that's tipped to be for their.
You said interesting again.
I did. Should we make it a drinking game? Every time I say it's interesting, you can take a shot, and then we'll say it lots, and you can fall to sleep.
Okay.
Ferrari for their 1000th championship event at their test ground.
The only issue I have with that, I don't think it's wide enough. I think it was developed as a test track, and kind of the same reason why if it would have gone ahead this year, I don't think that Zandvoort would have been a great race.
Mm.
Because it's too narrow. It's very short. It's a short circuit. And something like the touring cars would be a great race in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But F1 where the cars are just so fast. I don't know if you've seen the lap that Max did.
Yeah, and I was going to say
Very kind
the
of
gimmick
start
of,
on throttle, just
and the gimmick of the banked corner.
yeah.
It's not banked enough. If for it to be a gimmick that you're going to go out and go,
Yeah.
oh, it's 10 degrees. It's not. To look at it when they were building it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's fairly. But to see that on board from Max,
Yeah, you don't notice it.
is that F1 cashing in on the popularity of Max Verstappen?
Absolutely.
Obviously, it is. Even though he takes his fans everywhere.
Yeah.
I sat with the Dutch fans when we went to Barcelona last year, and that was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Just sit with them.
Well, one of the races, and we mentioned it, and it's where it's happening next week, would be Austria. I'd really like to go there, and I think that gets one of the biggest followings for Max.
Yeah, he calls it his home Grand Prix at the moment, doesn't he?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a Red Bull thing.
Yeah.
But he has a stand just for him.
So looking at some of the other races that could be on later in the year, then USA, Brazil, Mexico, definitely not. That's been ruled out because of coronavirus. Hockenheim still has, obviously there's all have a question mark, but Hockenheim, very much so. They've been apparently putting a bit of pressure on F1 to say, come to a decision.
Yeah.
Singapore have said no, finishing in Abu Dhabi. So we could still, if you think with 2 more visits to Italy, Hockenheim, Abu Dhabi, some of the 4 races.
Bahrain as well.
Bahrain, possibly China, but things have taken a turn back there, haven't they?
Japan, has that been ruled out?
But I think on Friday there could be some more announcements. I think as the racing gets underway.
Yeah.
Oh,
because Bahrain as well. Bahrain, you can have multiple configurations as well as Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
So
and they've said that at Bahrain, haven't they? Doing they call it the oval, even though it's about as oval as a square.
Yeah. Well, I've got one thing which an idea. Now it came about. I was watching the rerun of Singapore last year, and I was watching it, and it got to the final lap, and then it popped up 2 minutes, 2 minutes to go, and then I was like, oh wow, because then I remembered, there's a 2 hour maximum on races.
Yeah.
Why don't we make every race 2 hours long instead of having X amount of laps? Because they already have the contingency for light and for television, for a 2 hour race for safety cars and whatever. And then I thought of it, and I thought, well, I'll look at how long races are. So I looked at last year, and Singapore was 1 hour and 58. Then there was 2 races at over 100 minutes, or over 1 hour 40. There was 1 race at just over 70 minutes, which was 1 hour and 15 minutes, which was Monza. And then the rest of them, there's 7 races over 1 hour 20 to 1 hour 30, and 10 of over 1 hour 30 to 1 hour 40. So the majority of races are about 125 to 135, an hour and a half, let's say.
Yeah.
Why not just make it 2 hours? Whatever happens within those 2 hours, that's what you're racing to, instead of X amount of laps.
Because I suppose the laps is probably about evening out of probably mileage, isn't it?
Potentially, but I mean, if it's the same for everyone, then
I have some questions.
Okay.
And now it's part of the time of the podcast for Q&A.
Yeah, I've got some questions, right? So they're doing, in this new Formula One season, they're doing 2 races at certain tracks. Yeah?
Correct.
One where they go the normal way around, and one where they drive in reverse.
No.
Not in
Now-
reverse now.
I'm really excited about the driving in reverse, and I don't know why they don't do it more often, because that would make it more of a spectacle.
But they're not. So, next
It's not
question.
in reverse.
They're not driving in reverse.
No.
No.
Oh,
The runoffs and yeah.
Silverstone did mute it that it's no idea that they could do, but they haven't got the license for it, and I don't think they've even bothered trying to get it because it is about the safety of, as Ken says, runoffs and.
You have to have a separate license for reversing, driving the car in reverse.
No, you won't put the car.
Because this is news.
Not. Are you on about reversing the car around the circuit?
yeah, driving in reverse.
Yeah.
What I was looking forward to. I'd
Have you
heard that they
seen
were
the
gonna-
size of the mirrors on an F1 car?
Yes, that's what. I didn't know they went in reverse. To be fair.
That's skill, that going in reverse all the way.
Yeah. Then we'll see who's good. Then.
Right, next question.
Okay, it's called Formula One. What is the formula?
See if Ken's found the same as me. So the formula is the set of rules that all cars have to follow and all the drivers have to follow.
But do they?
That's not a formula.
They do. The formula to make an exciting sport like Formula One.
The thing that I've got is the name was created to represent the idea that cars were built to a formula, differentiating it from the other series from the time that raced converted road cars. So there were more bespoke cars than just production cars.
They were built for this specific purpose.
So why aren't the cars all the same?
Yeah.
They're built to, well, with all rules, they're built to match the rules, but then there is always tolerances and things that rules don't. What's the word? That rules don't. Yeah. So the dual axis steering. If we're going to want to get really technical, the dual axis steering.
Oh, we do.
Mercedes
We do
this
want to
year.
get technical. If you're going to answer a question, you better answer it properly.
Properly. So yeah, so that was a gap in the rules that Mercedes looked at and went, "Can we do that?" They worked with the FIA and they said yes, you can, and then instantly banned it for next year. And I could really bore you about dual axis steering.
Please do.
Next question.
Isn't there a form of motor racing where everyone drives the same car?
There was a couple of years ago.
Why
it
is
only
it
lasted one season?
Why?
I can't remember.
Because to me, that sounds like it's more of a skill.
Yes.
More, mechanic.
More down to the driver.
A1 Grand Prix.
Yeah.
It was called. Tell a lie. It lasted 4 years. That's how much of an impression it made. So it was a single make of car. But there are actually, if you think about it, I say that. You've got the Ginettas, which is a different race series, which is all the same car. Formula Ford, exactly the same car.
Yeah, there's a lot of individual series, which
Yeah.
So why isn't that more popular than Formula One?
Because Formula One is the pinnacle. It's the faster.
Yeah, but it's
the fastest formula.
More of it's got the way that I would prefer it has got more to do with skill and less to do with just having the most money.
And that's why the budget cap's been brought in, isn't it? To actually address that.
So
and changing the way that they.
When did that come in?
It doesn't. It comes in next year, doesn't it?
Oh right. So it might actually get interesting then.
Were you not listening before?
It's too busy learning how to knit.
Playing the flute or learning to knit.
See, this is what we talked about before. So there's going to be $150 million.
I tell you what, I'll listen to the podcast.
You go back. You just rewind.
I'll listen to that bit.
Do you think Formula One could do more to make it more entertaining? As in, like, there's too many people like me and Mono that have a similar ethos on it, that we want real competitive driving, and I find at times there's not enough of it. Whereas, like I think Superbikes is quite entertaining because there's a lot in that. I just don't. I just think there's too many races. Is it because of the circuits, or is it? I know we all think it's down to the cars, but do you think the circuits could be done better to make it more competitive?
A lot of it is down. Well, some of it's down to the cars, and some of it
I think a lot of it's down to the cars.
A lot of it's down to cars. In a lot of the circuits, the cars are either too fast or too wide, so you don't get that chance to overtake. Places like Monaco, which I think everyone in Formula One agrees they only go there for the money, and because it's Monaco. They are, but some of the reg changes which are now coming in 2022, is all designed.
That's a long way in the future.
Are all designed to make it so that the cars. The issue is at the moment when the cars get close to each other, it screws the engines. They overheat. They call it dirty air, don't they? Because it screws the aerodynamics. So that you will see a driver could be right on the backside of another car, and if he's not overtaken within a lap or two, he backs off because his engine will explode. So this is why they're bringing in these aerodynamic changes to the cars. The biggest reason is to make sure that they do have more overtaking.
Yeah, because there's not enough of that. As I say, you can just watch the first corner, come back in 2 hours and work out who won. Because it's usually the same guy that came out of the first corner, okay?
Oh, as I discussed earlier, it's not. Only 8 out of 21 races were won by the guy on pole.
He was
I didn't say out of pole.
His beard.
I didn't say out of pole. I just said out of the first corner. Because the guy on pole still needs to get off pole quick to get around the first corner.
Well, just on the new regulations. So, one of the main things with the aero regulations, it's actually an idea which came about in the 70s and was banned. And it's an idea, they call it, like, I can't remember the very technical term, but they called it the skirts. I think it was the Lotus, which basically the laws of aerodynamics, if you reduce the amount of air going underneath it, like escaping from under the car, and you kind of direct it through the middle, underneath, it actually has the reverse effect and actually drags the car closer to the ground, making them go faster, but also reducing the drag which comes off the car. So that's an idea that we've taken for next year. Because as I say, it was actually banned in the 70s, but they've looked at all these like old regulations, and come up with that will actually make the cars be able to race a lot closer.
Well, my follow-up question to this would be, so what we're doing is trying to make all the cars go quicker so that there'll be more takeovers. Is it like...
No, I think it slows them down. I think they've said it's going to be quite a drop in speed.
Yeah, no, but therefore all you're doing is the same thing to everyone. What's therefore... Because what I'm asking, what I want, is you've got one car, it's flying away like a nutter, and no one's got anything to catch him up. So if you slow all of them down, it's just the person who's got flying away at nutter, it's just going slower, but no one's catching up because they're all going slower as well.
No, at the moment, you've got driver in front will go off into the distance because he's got no, he's got clean air. He's not got the drag or anything from another car, so he will go off. At the moment, if say you're in third and you've got a faster car than the car in second, because of the aerodynamics at the moment, it's very hard to overtake, even if you have the faster car, because of the aerodynamics, and it almost creates a vacuum. So you have no oxygen air flowing into the engine, so the engine does not run as well as it should be.
Well, how did that happen in the first place then?
Just advances in aerodynamics and making the cars go faster.
They got to such a level. I was watching a lot of classic races, and during the 90s, it was great racing, and they were racing close. About 20 years ago, there was that kind of peak where everyone kind of figured out aerodynamics, let's say. And once you figured that out, it's, as Font says, it's the dirty air, it's turbulent air. If you imagine you're driving along, you're just driving into nothing, that's absolutely fine. You've got nothing resistance. If you drive a car at 200 mile an hour through that, the air is turbulent. Airplanes get turbulence. It shakes and it slows the car down. So a car behind will feel the effects of that and won't go as fast. And it's the same thing if you've ever heard of slipstreaming. And you can do this in your own car on a motorway. You drive behind a lorry doing 55 miles an hour. Drive right behind him, and you save fuel because the car's not working as much to go through that air in front.
I've got one more question.
Go on.
And this is a serious question. How many years left do you think there will be in Formula One? Because with Formula E rising the way it is doing, and everyone's moving towards, electronic motoring, how far into the future will we be when they've decided that they're not going to pursue Formula One anymore because of the damage it may be doing to the environment, and we're not using fossil fuels anymore or whatnot, and we're going to be solely electric? How far away do you think that is?
Well, Formula One themselves have said that they're going to be carbon. I know it's not quite the same thing. They've said they're going to be carbon neutral by 2030, have a net zero carbon footprint. That's their aim. Formula E, it's doing all right. It's not setting the world alight, but it's very interesting. Actually, it's probably more that closer racing that
people do want.
Yeah.
And it's a very good grid. There's a lot of very good drivers there.
But that'll improve as it's looking. If it gets to the point where it's looking like Formula One aren't able to continue the way they are, if it starts to damage the sport that Formula E is on the rise, then I'm guessing there are teams that are in both. And if they do have teams in both, are they going to start moving the money over and put more into E than?
Yeah, there is a Mercedes.
Yeah, that's what it's going to come down to, isn't it? It's going to come down to where do the sponsors want to put their sponsorship, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be honest, that's what it's going to come down to.
It'll come down to the way of the world. Personally, I don't think Formula One will ever leave, for the pure reason there will still be people that want to hear an engine.
But from the environmental side of it, you want to hear the noise of an engine. So what if it's something that they said that? Well, then
Formula One can do all they can. This is a whole other podcast and a whole other topic on, the amount of fuel wasted. We can go into the amount of ships in the ocean, and airplanes and whatnot, and businesses, and we can go into that. I think Formula One should just take care of itself, do what it can. There was an interesting comment. I can't remember if it was Top Gear or the Grand Tour, and James May met with Jay Leno, went through his car collection, and he was talking about an electric car. And James May asked the question, is it the death of the motor car? And Jay Leno came back and said, I think it's, it's a good thing for the motor car because, most people will probably drive an electric car in the future, but they will still want, a car to go away on the weekends and to feel. And he used an analogy of horses 100 odd years ago. The motor car saved the horses. Horses were treated as vehicles and would be used, and that's how you got around. Once motor cars came in, horses became a luxury.
In another 100 years' time, we're going to see F1 cars roaming.
In a field.
Well, we won't be around to see that, will we?
And
Saw that coming.
We won't be around to see that.
But the bottom line is, it's not going anywhere.
Just yet, no.
The Formula One is not going anywhere fast.
Was that the only reason for that question?
Yeah.